So even though up to now we haven't experience with working in most of these programs, I wouldn't say that I have a lot of knowledge with what's happening in each menu at the top menu bar. But I'll give you a brief description of what I know. So if we go to the top, you open the file menu. This is basically where you can either create a new file or you can open a recent file that you've worked in before. Otherwise, you can save what you've been working with or export it for certain screen settings. Or you can even package all your files that you've been working with into one folder to send it off to someone so they don't lose everything you've been working with. Otherwise, it's also about setting up your documents and general file info of what you've brought in. If you go next into the edit menu, this is basically where you can either copy or cut the object you're working with or even paste something into the file you're working on. Otherwise, it's mainly for your color settings and editing your color. If you go next to your objects, this is basically if you're working on a certain object or if you're working with a few objects, you can do things like group them together. You can lock a certain object so you can work over it without affecting it. Otherwise, mainly it's setting up your path or your shape of your object and just giving you different settings to play on the specific object you've selected. Next is the type menu. This is basically once you've worked with the type tool and you've typed out something, here you can change the font or you can select recent fonts that you've used in a previous file. Also changing the size of your fonts. Otherwise, you can also, for example, go and find the font that you've downloaded in this menu. Otherwise, you can also do things like insert special characters for your font and your type that you're busy with. For example, adding in symbols like a bullet or a specific paragraph symbol. Just stuff like that. Next is the select menu. This is basically say you've got things selected on your page. You can use this to deselect a certain object, or you can use this menu to select the object next to it. Otherwise, if you have an object selected already, you can go and change its appearance, its blending mode, its stroke that you can get in the same sub-menu. Next is the effect menu, which I don't have enough experience with, but basically, like it says, you add effects. I've mostly used with blur, specifically Gaussian blur, which you can find in that sub-menu. But you can also add other things like you can pixelate your object, you can distort it, stylize it. This is also where you can rasterize your images and warp them, that kind of thing. Next in the view menu is basically view settings for your page. For example, showing grid lines, zooming in and out. You can enter full screen mode to give your objects a better preview. Just that kind of thing. Next is the window menu. Basically, this is where you find most things. If you're needing, for example, to go to your brushes settings, you would go and tick next to its name, and then the brushes window will open up and you can go then change it from there. Next is the help menu. This is basically where you can search for something that you're not sure where to find, or you can check for updates and just get general info about Adobe and specifically Illustrator. Next is Photoshop. When you open the file menu, it's almost the same as Illustrator, where you can create a new file or open recent projects. Here you can also close all projects you're working on or save them and export them. Basically the same. Next is the edit menu, kind of the same also, where you can cut and copy and paste images or objects that you have saved. You can also adjust your color settings here too, but there's a bit more as well, where once you've been working with layers, for example, you can tick a box or tick something to auto align them, or here you can also warp whatever layer you're working with, just things like that, general settings. Next is the image menu. It's a little bit different here. You change modes and adjustments to your images and layers. For example, you can change it to grayscale, you can make it CMYK instead of RGB color. You can also adjust your levels of your color, your exposure values, making it black and white. I don't know, just general. Here is more the color grading settings. In this menu, you can also duplicate certain images or layers that you're working with, or change the canvas size and image size as well. Next is the layer menu. This one is quite helpful if you're not sure what the shortcuts are when working with your layers. Here you can basically lock certain layers together, duplicate them, group them together, rename them. You can add adjustment layers as well as vector masks and layer masks. In your type menu, this is in a way similar to Illustrator's type menu, but it's again just working with your font sizes, your font styles, and if say you have fonts downloaded here, you can also replace these fonts if they have gone missing from previous projects and saves, from previous file saves. Your select menu is almost the same as well, by where you can deselect, reselect, or find layers that you've hidden and it's lost within all your other layers. Within your filter menu, this is where you can work with effects like noises, blurs, sharpening your image, stylizing your image, and also import filters that you may have downloaded, or you can use filters that they have in Photoshop already. A tool I have worked with before in this menu would be Liquify, as an example. Next is your 3D layer, which I haven't really worked with before, but from looking at the menu when opening it, you can kind of see that in here you can take whatever 3D layer you've been working with and render it, or you can apply things like cross sections, or you can show or hide polygons that you've worked with. Yeah, I don't know, like I said, I haven't really worked with it before. In your view, it's kind of the same as your Illustrator view menu, where you're just working with view settings of your canvas, zooming in and out, fitting it to your screen, changing things like your pixel aspect ratio. Yeah. Next is your window menu. Again, very similar to Illustrator. This is where you click open window and you can find something that you're not sure where it is. You tick it and a window will pop up and you can adjust its settings. This is pretty much very useful, as I'm not really sure where most things are in this program. Help exactly the same as Illustrator. Next, we are going to be explaining the menu bar of Adobe InDesign. If we click open file, it's kind of the same general thing. Saving, opening, creating something new, importing something you've worked on with before, packaging its files, to then export or send off to someone else so they can find everything you've been working with in a certain project. If you open the edit menu, again, very general, cutting, pasting something from or in, selecting, almost you can. Next is the edit menu, again very general, of copying or pasting certain things you've been working on or with. You can also select everything you've been working with or apply certain changes. You can find your color settings here as well, same as Illustrator and Photoshop, and pretty much most of them. So yeah, kind of the same, not really any real difference. Next is your layout menu. Haven't explored this one too much, but basically I've mainly used it for the pages option, where I've added pages or deleted certain pages or moved them in a specific order. It's basically a way to you can go into here and tick whether you want to go to your next page or your previous one, instead of zooming out and moving the pages around to try find what you've been working with before. Next is your type menu, which I think is quite important for InDesign, because obviously InDesign is very good for working with type. Here, kind of the same as Illustrator as well. It's just adjusting settings to what you've been working with in terms of type. So your fonts, your type sizes, your character settings, as well as your paragraph settings. And here, it's a shortcut to finding your character styles and paragraph styles. Makes life a little bit easier. You can also, for example, in this menu, again, insert characters, for example, bullet points, dashes, characters for your paragraphs. And another help is at the bottom of the menu. There's something called Show Hidden Characters, which I usually have ticked just to help me order things neatly and in the correct way. Your next menu is Objects. It's basically if you have an object on your page, here you just transform the object, arrange it in a certain order compared to your other objects, add an effect to whatever you've got selected and are working with. Just kind of interacting with the object you're working with. And again, like Illustrator, you can still come here to lock your object, group it to something else, or hide it if you don't want to see it while working. Next is your table menu. Here, if you have a table created on your page, you can come and adjust its settings, or add or delete or insert things to this table. For example, if you have a table of 5 columns, you can come in here, select 2 columns and delete those columns to make it a table of 3 columns. If that made any sense. It's just a general thing for your table options. Next, in your view menu, it's kind of generally the same as most. It's just adjusting the view of your canvas or your page you're working on. For example, you can change screen modes to make it a preview mode or a bleed mode, presentation mode. You can also bring out your grid lines if you want to line up things correctly. This will be the menu to help you do stuff like that. Again, your window menu, basically the same as most. You come here to find something you're not sure where to find on the page, tickets, the window will come up. You can change your settings. You can also use it to arrange order of things you've been working with. The help menu is the same as usual, just searching something within InDesign that you absolutely are not sure of where it is. The next program is Premiere Pro, probably one of my favorite ones, but I would like to spend more time exploring the different menus on the menu bar just to give me more of a grip of the program. But yeah, my favorite one for sure for video editing. Your file menu, same as usual, creating a new project or opening a project you've been working on before. Here you also save what you've been working with or importing certain files that you haven't imported before when creating the project. Here you also export your media to kind of finalize what you've been working with, to create an MP4, for example. Next is your edit menu. Again, also kind of the same, copying or pasting something that you've selected. Also undoing a mistake that you've done before, as well as selecting certain things that you want. Yeah, kind of basic. Yeah, your clip menu. Here is where you've selected a certain clip. You can kind of link that clip to other clips, or you can make a sub clip from it. You can modify what you've selected. You can also find your audio options in here, as well as changing the speed and duration, that kind of situation. Basically, it's your clip settings, specifically the clip you have selected, within your timeline. In your sequence menu, this is working with the media down in your timeline. Basically, you open this menu if you want to, for example, render the clips you're working with, or render certain sections that you're mainly working on. Otherwise, you also use this menu to zoom in and out of your timeline, as well as adding like audio tracks or deleting something you've selected. So it's your timeline settings basically. In markers, this is just a menu you use if you, again, don't know your shortcuts. So if you're working on a clip that you want to bring into your timeline, you basically open this menu to set marker points. For example, where the clip starts, where you want to add a marker for where you want the clip to start and end. You can also mark certain selections that you've made. I don't know, this isn't a menu that I usually open purely because I do know the shortcuts of what I'm wanting to do, or I know where to find it on screen. In your graphics menu, this is one I haven't really used, but from looking at it once it's opened, it's basically where you can create new layers or install your motion graphic templates that I'm guessing you have downloaded. In your window menu, kind of the same, it's just ticking different windows to open so you can adjust settings if you don't know where it is on the screen or you don't know where to search it within your effects panel. But for example, you can come to this menu if you want to color grade your videos, and you can go into your Lumetri color. Tick that and your options will open. Help, the same as usual, just using it to find something in Premiere Pro where you're not really sure where it is. Adobe After Effects, this is something we have used quite often so far in multimedia, although I don't really know too much because there's just so much you can do within After Effects, but I'll give it a go. In your file menu, basically the same as usual. Here you open projects, you create something new, you close or save something. Yeah, general menu, kind of the same as usual. Obviously certain settings change because it is in After Effects and it changes within each program. Next is the edit menu. Here, kind of the same. You redo or undo something that you've just applied to in your composition or to your layer. You can also, again, cut, copy or paste certain things in your composition. You can duplicate layers, or you can select or deselect everything. Yeah, it's kind of the same. Composition is just applying certain settings to the comp you have selected, or here you can create a new composition, or for example, you can take your comp and from here you use this menu to add it to render queue, for example. Next is the layer menu. Here you can open a certain layer or create a new layer, and you can add or transform things to your layer. I know I don't really use this menu too often, but when I do, I normally use it for the transform settings or just changing the quality to something a little bit lower, just so it previews a lot quicker. Next is the effects menu. Here you can find all your effects, and basically you can add these to your shapes or your layers or whatever you have within your composition. This is something that I'd love to explore more, but for example, with my last brief, here is where I found the effect for Particle World, and I used and adjusted that for my background. The animation menu, I haven't really used this menu often because the main thing I've used from here is easing my keyframes, and I normally just right click to do that. But from opening it, I can see that you can also apply certain presets or open those presets, as well as animate your text that you've added in. Yeah, and I think in this window, yes, it says that at the bottom, you can also reveal properties within your keyframes, but I know the shortcut to that is U, so I don't really open the menu to do that anyway. So yeah, something I need to look at more. Next is the view menu, kind of the same. You use it to zoom in and out with what you're working with. Main thing I'm using this is the resolution, just obviously lowering the resolution so it renders quicker. But here you can also tick and untick things to obviously show and hide certain things, for example, like guides or grids. Yeah, in your window menu, again the same. Here you can tick things within your program, so in this case After Effects. Yeah, and you just, if you don't know where to find it on the actual screen, here you just come, you open, here yeah, basically if you don't know where to find it on the screen, Windows your best bet, it has everything in it. Help menu, basically the same as usual from what I'm looking at. Just use it to search for something that you're not sure where to find, and just getting general help with the program. Dreamweaver, also a program I've never worked with before, so I will try my best to explain what I can see within the menu bar up top. Open file. The file, edit and view menu is generally always the same, obviously just with minor changes within the program, but yeah, they all look the same to me. You go into your view menu. Here, it's a little bit different. Instead of just having your standard zoom in and zoom out, you also have something called split views and view modes, which I'm guessing will work once you've created a new project or a new file, or you've brought a file in. Yeah. If you go into your insert menu, here you insert things like images, paragraphs, tables, figures. There's also things to like change there's also things like add a header or work with your form. I see there's something called Bootstrap components. But like I said, I've never used this program before, and I could be very wrong in saying this, but I think a Bootstrap is something you see in most smartphones or apps. For example, those dots at the bottom of a menu page, and you can swipe left or right. It shows that there are like more than one page, or use those to indicate that there are like more than one image, and you can swipe to the side to view more. I could be wrong though. Yeah, so that is your insert menu. Your tools menu, I'm guessing this is just used to locate certain tools or clean up something you've worked with. Yeah, just tools for your library, your commands, your HTML. Your find menu, I'm just going with the name, but I'm pretty sure it's used to find certain things like a document or files, or bring in something that you were working on previously. Site, not really sure what a site is, but here you create a new site and you manage your sites. There's also an advanced settings for FTP logs, or recreating site caches, or removing connection scripts. Not really sure what any of that is. Window, ticking things for more windows to pop up. Opening extensions, your toolbars, arranging your things, workspace layouts. Not really sure. Help, also the same, searching for things you are not sure where they are. Adobe Animate, to be honest with you, this is the first time I'm opening this program, so I have no experience whatsoever with what happens, but I'll try my best to explain each menu in the menu bar. Your file menu looks the same as usual. This is where you open or create something new, as well as importing or exporting your project, and also obviously saving what you've worked on so you can work on it at a later stage. Your edit menu also kind of looks the same. It's used to undo or redo a certain setting you've made, as well as copy and paste objects in. Yeah, it's also used to deselect or select certain things, which I'm guessing would be keyframes. Yes, there's also a menu for your timeline. Open it up. You can see there it's used to remove frames, as well as copy and paste layers that you've worked with. Your view menu, also the same, it's just used to change the view of your workspace, as well as show rulers, grids, guides, apply synaptic settings, things like that. Your inserts menu, it's quite a small one. It looks like you just use it to add in new symbols or insert things into your timeline, for example, a new layer, things like that. Your modify menu, like I said, I have no experience, so I'm kind of just going with it. But I'm guessing this is just where once you have something selected, you use this menu to obviously modify that. For example, if you have a shape selected, you can use this menu to smoothen it or straighten it, or you can arrange certain things within this menu. Text seems kind of self-explanatory. You have text that you've put into your animation, you use it to change the font, the size, and the style, as well as align it to wherever you would want it to be aligned to. Your commands menu, I'm not really sure what commands are, but here you can run your command, you can manage your save commands or get more commands. You can also work with convert, export and import settings. Your control menu looks like a general menu where you just play what you have animated, as well as rewind it or go to the end. It also looks like you can adjust some timeline settings or control what is happening within your timeline. Your debug menu, not really sure what happens here. I'm probably going to say the wrong thing as well. But it looks like you can take your movie or whatever you've animated and bring it into like an iOS simulator or something called Air Debug. Yeah, like I said, not really sure what is happening within this menu. Window, pretty similar to your other programs. You're just looking for something, you're not really sure of where to find it on the screen. And just general settings if you aren't aware of what the shortcuts are. So help menu also looks exactly the same as the other programs.